So this morning, as I was laying in bed listening to some scripture, the parable of the soil was playing. Now, I say I was listening. Honestly, I was probably drifting in and out of sleep at the time. But the parable of the sower, or the parable of the soil, however you want to, whatever you want to call it, I kind of had an epiphany, if you will. Now, perhaps it's not an epiphany in the sense that it's necessarily a new belief of mine, but it was kind of an interesting perspective from which to think about this parable, and that is that I think it actually applies a lot to business. So, um, if you think about the seed, now you could say it's very important to have good seed, and that is true because the type of seed does determine the type of crop to some extent, right? But you can make an argument that soil is more important than seed, and the business translation of this is that the market is more important than the product. Now, this may not always be true, but this could be true in some cases. So let's think about the seed for a minute. So if I'm planting a wheat seed, and I have the option, I've got two options. Option number one is I can plant a mediocre wheat seed. It's got very mediocre genetics. It's got very mediocre yield resistance, etc., etc. But I can plant it into phenomenal soil. That's option one. Option two is I've got a phenomenal seed. I mean, the seed is terrific. It's got great drought tolerance. It's got excellent yield potential. It's got amazing disease resistance. And but I'm going to be planting it some hard rocky ground. So I will, any day of the week, take option one. I will take the mediocre seed with the excellent soil any day of the week. Whereas the excellent seed in the mediocre or in the bad soil, now, we could say, to be fair, well, it should be excellent seed in mediocre soil, but doesn't necessarily follow the parable, right? So the parable is primarily good soil versus, on the whole, fairly bad conditions. Either you've got soil compaction or traffic, you've got weed growth, you have weed pressure, I guess, as you might say, and then you've got rocky soil. These other types of soils do not present a lot of potential necessarily, or shallow soil that goes down before it hits rock or whatever. So, given the option of in this, having a mediocre seed to plant in good soil, or having good seed to plant in bad soil, I will take the mediocre seed in the good soil any day of the week, I would say. So I think that you could say that so from a business standpoint, what I'm getting at here is that, yeah, running your business in a really excellent manner, having a good product, all these things are very important, but to be in an industry that's growing, to be in a market that's growing, or to be in a market that's, where there's opportunity, where the competition is not so well entrenched that it's impossible to get a foothold, things like that. These things are really, really important. And so you can have an excellent seed, if you will. You could have a commitment to running an excellent business. But if you fail to find an environment for that business, if you fail to find a niche for your product or whatever, and then it can be very, very tough sledding. And so I think that's the thing that people often ignore. I think especially, as a newbie into business, right? It's very easy to be like, not real cognizant, right, of the overall market conditions, and to be more kind of obsessed with the personal fortune and success that you're about to have with your your thing. So now, do people beat the odds? Sure, people beat the odds. It's certainly possible. And do you always have to have a new and flashy idea in order to be successful? I mean, certainly not. There are many very ordinary businesses that bring in, that make a good living for people. And you could even, yeah. So I'm not saying you have to have something new and flashy every time. I'm not saying you always have to be in a market that's growing at breakneck speed. But I am saying that the market conditions may have more to do with your success than with how brilliant of an operator you are.